Welcome to Sophia's journey to Olympus. The soil was thick where no one dared to tread, and vines were black as roots of buried thread. Sophia came where bloom and bone entwine, where life begins again through death's design. Demeter sang of what the worm once knew, that all things fall to rise in altered hue. A tree will split, a stem will bend and break, but from the ash, the seed begins to wake. She learned to love the rot that feeds the rose, to bless the fall that makes the spiral close. The wheel turns on, and loss becomes a gate. Each fading light prepares another state. But Hades came with stillness in his hand, a flawless field, untouched by death or land. No change, he said, no pain, no bloom, no time. She turned from him toward mud, decay, and rime. The sky was red. Ari's drums were loud and bare. Each breath became a weapon in the air. Sophia stood where fear becomes a flame, where rising once will never be the same. She learned to meet the strike and shape its path, to turn the burn of dread into her wrath. Each scar she bore returned with double might, each fall a step that pulled her into flight. But every win gave rise to stronger foes. The circle spun where no one ever knows. Does power end or feed the war through pain? Can strength be free when fear becomes its chain? Then Hades came with silence on his breath. No battle, no ascent, and no more death. She nearly dropped her blade, but then she cried, "My peace is won where wounds are justified." The sun rose sharp, a blade across the sky, its edge too clean for anything to lie. Sophia climbed where every line was flame, the hall of truth, where light and judgment name. Apollo stood, no veil across his gaze, his eyes the map through which all paths are praise. "Perception comes," he said, "but never free. The light will show what you're not meant to see." She saw the threads, how motion bred its cost, how every gain entwined with something lost. And then the light grew fierce, a crown of glass, where meaning shattered, letting none to pass. Hades stood still behind the flare and gleam, and whispered, "Truth is just a burning dream." She turned her head, but not to flee or fall, and learned to blink, to choose, to see it all. No roads were marked, and none returned the same. Each stone she stepped had never had a name. Sophia walked where nothing kept its role, where Hermes shaped the edge of self and soul. "Transition," said the god, "is not a line. It loops, it trades, it crosses by design. To reach the end you cannot go ahead. You give a word and get yourself instead." She gave a gift, a truth she once had worn. It came back twisted, broken, half reborn. The bridge she built collapsed beneath the weight. A name she trusted turned and named her fate. Then Hades came with chains disguised as thread. "Stop crossing, choose. Be whole, or else be dead." She laughed once more, and leapt the shattered seam, not forward but between, a sideward gleam. The trees were still, the world withdrew its sound, a place where only inward steps are found. Sophia walked alone through root and leaf, where silence dressed her sorrow into grief. Artemis watched in shadows, one with land, and taught her how to hear without demand. Through solitude her senses came alive. Her strength grew sharp where no one else could thrive. The deeper in she moved, the more she knew. That being one is how you guard the two. Vigilance was not fear, but love held tight, a readiness to shield what flees the light. But Hades stood within a hollow tree. "No need to watch, let stillness swallow me." She felt the hush could cage her breath and mind, and ran back out to learn, not just to find. The molten heart of form began to glow, where labour moved and thought began to flow. Sophia stood where sparks and vision meet, where only fire and focus could complete. Hephaestus spoke with hammer, not with word, and in his strikes, intention's soul was heard. She learned to bind her dreams in metal shape, to bend her pain into a tool or cape. Each effort held the memory of design, and every flaw became a working sign. What once was thought now gleamed as shining stone. No vision lived unless it bled and groaned. But Hades came, and all the steel turned grey. "Why build?" he asked. "It all will break one day." She wiped the ash and shaped her hands anew. To make, though brief, is still a thing most true. Where roses wept and marble held its breath, Sophia came through gardens thick with death. And yet the bloom was sweet, the thorns precise, each longing held its form like blade in ice. Aphrodite stood with gaze of fire and glass, and taught her how the tides of yearning pass. Desire alone will burn without a shape, but form alone will crumble, void of grace. Together joined, they pull the soul in flight, a union born where hunger meets the right. And in that joining, something deep was healed. The self no longer broke, but was revealed. But Hades came with scent too sweet to bear. "Take this," he said, "and never need to care." The form was false, the love a binding chain. She broke the charm and walked through realer pain. In marble halls where oaths are set in stone, Sophia stood where bonds become the throne. Hera sat in robes of law and flame, and every vow was carved into a name. To keep one word is not a passive thing, it builds the house, the table, and the ring. Fidelity, she learned, is not mere stay. It is the force that keeps the dark at bay. From loyal heart came unity made strong, and unity gave power to belong. No kingdom stands without the vow made true. No voice is real unless it echoes too. But Hades whispered, "Loyalty's a cage. Let every bond dissolve. Release your rage." She watched the stone begin to crack, then said, "A promise lives when not by fear it's fed." She entered halls where minds were drawn like blades, and every move was weighed before it fades. Athena stood with shield and sharpened gaze, where wisdom danced within a moral blaze. Sophia learned that knowing was not all. It had to rise with virtue, lest it fall. To act from thought, yet still from what is right. To measure power not by will but light. And action came not freely but through fire, where choice was sifted by both rule and liar. Only through both could deeds be worth their name. A strike not blind, a spark that holds its aim, but Hades came, and doubt was thick and wide. What virtue stands when all your truths divide? She paused, then moved with care and steady hand. To act in shadow is still to take a stand. She reached the coast where silence held the deep, where storms begin in oceans fast asleep. Poseidon stirred beneath the layered tide, where tension waits and depth does not divide. Sophia walked where pressure hummed below, and learned that calm can still prepare the blow. Not every quake begins with wrath or flame. Some rise from weight too long without a name. Emotion ran like water through her chest, not rage, but grief long hidden, unconfessed. She saw how depth and strain can birth the wave, that crashing truth can wound but also save. But Hades whispered from the undertow, "Suppress the surge, let nothing break or flow." She nearly sank beneath his muffled tune, then roared and rose to dance beneath the moon. She entered through a gate that had no name. The walls were bones, the air was still as shame. No gods were here, no stories held the thread. The sky above was stone, the earth was dead. And Hades waited, not with threat or fire, but silence hungered by a deep desire. "You've wandered far," he said, "and what remains? A self composed of borrowed loss and chains. You call it growth, but all things you became were carved from gods whose forms will burn the same. What name is yours? What will is not a mask? What strength survives when stripped of every task?" He opened up the world beneath her feet, not down but in, where selves and shadows meet. Her voice dissolved, her vision failed to hold. Her memories turned brittle, cracked and cold. He said, "This is the truth beyond your climb. You never were. You echoed dream and time." And she, unmade, began to see the cost. To claim the all, the self must first be lost. And still, beneath the ruin and despair, one ember glowed. No thought, no form, no prayer. It was not will, it was not light or name. It was the fact that she had come, and came. She stood, though not as one who had not died, but one who chose the end, then stepped inside. Her words returned, not owned, but freely given. I am because I break, and still have risen. The sky cracked open, not in wrath, but joy. The stars aligned. The myths ceased to employ. There was no throne. There was no judge above. There was a space that burned with law and love. And Zeus was there, not as a single king, but as the weight that made all meaning sing. He was the echo of her final breath. He was the god who dies to conquer death. He did not ask, nor speak, nor praise her name. He was her name, and all from which it came. The self she lost returned not as before, but now as flame that burned in every core. She saw her past not in a single line, but folded like a spiral into time. Each step she'd walked, each vow she'd failed to keep, had built the place where gods and mortals meet. And Logos stood with her, not just as a sun, but as the joining where all paths are one. The word made flesh, the light made law and song, the will that turns what breaks into the strong. And she, now burning brighter than the stars, became not queen, but bearer of the scars. Her crown was not above, but in her breath, a name reborn through every form of death. So when she spoke, the world became its sound. The gods knelt low, the sky bent down to ground. For what she brought was not command or throne, but truth that sings, "You are not alone."